Morning, everyone, and welcome to today's Focus Marketing webinar. Is it time to rebrand? My name's Caitlin Dillon, and I'm the Strategic Marketing Director here at Focus Marketing. And just recently, we've been working on quite a few rebrands and refreshes. So we thought that perhaps it might be time to share some of our learning with our audience out there. So just before I get started, please feel free to put any questions that you might have in the chat box. I've got Tracy here, who's part of our team here at Focus, running the webinar. So she'll alert me if any questions come through, and she's also going to try and keep me on time. Turns out that there's quite a lot to discuss. So just to introduce myself, I'm Caitlin, and I'm an experienced brand and marketing communications professional, and I've worked in like a really broad variety of industries, which is probably why I'm really enjoying consulting and assisting companies to grow and feel proud of their work. In my previous role, I was the marketing director for an international media representation company based in London, and we had a positioning challenge there that certainly led us to a full rebrand. So my rebranding experience goes back a little way. So I'll tell you a little bit about that later. And I've also worked in the industrial space with a company called Nowco, which then became Ecolab in Asia, in a regional communications role, really. But that huge merger involved, some brand challenges and certainly brand integration and communication challenges. So I'll share some of those as well. And obviously, as I mentioned, we've been working on quite a few at Focus Marketing lately. So I'll share some we've done and tell you a bit some that are underway, which you'll see appear in our socials and on our website in due course. Please feel free to connect with us on LinkedIn and stay in touch so that you can be sure to follow the journeys of these brands as they unfold. So I probably should have moved to this slide while I told you about myself. But anyway, I shall move on. So when is it time to rebrand? Today, I'm going to just take you through a number of reasons of, the circumstances of why you might do a rebrand or a refresh, a little bit about the difference between the two, and a few important things to remember. Obviously, you can come to us for help if needs be, but I'll take you through all of that today. So the term rebrand is actually very commonly used interchangeably with refresh as well. So they've actually got a lot of overlap as terms, and the lines are most certainly blurred. But here at Focused, I feel like rebrand is a little bit more than a refresh. It's basically a marketing strategy that involves changing your company's corporate image, or even your organisation by developing, it could be a new name, but not always, logo, symbol, or related visual assets, websites. It even talks about your positioning and your messaging. The goal of any rebrand or even refresh is to primarily refresh your brand identity, and then making sure that you're differentiated in the minds of your customers, investors, even prospects, competitors, employees, and of course the general public, depending on your business. So I thought I'll give you a few examples. Here, from a rebrand perspective, this is an example. A rebrand is fundamentally like a new direction for the company. It could include redefining the brand, the values, the positioning strategy, how your brand is perceived in the marketplace. And it can be quite a heavily involved process that requires research and planning, and certainly a meticulous rollout plan. Here's an example from Huffington Post. They rebranded to HuffPost and went to market with this new visual identity. And at the time, they said that it was designed to better reflect its position as a platform for the people. So they chose a brighter shade, they redesigned the logo. It was deliberate in their goal to move towards sort of a more tabloid aesthetic, and certainly tabloid editorial as well. So I think it shows, quite clearly the difference. Here is what I would probably consider more of a refresh. It's an evolution focusing on your visual identity. Doesn't necessarily change your market position, but it certainly gives you an updated look and feel. So it gives you a recognisable connection to the original identity, but tells your audience that you're modern and you're relevant and you keep up with the times. So why would you do it? So, I mean, lots of companies do rebrand. And here I've set out like a series of reasons that you might consider that it's time to do one or the other. It is important to note that your company might fit into one or more of these categories, and even some of the examples flow through in the discussion. So I'll try and use some real life stuff that we've done at Focused and some from my previous experience to share with you, bring it to life. So reason one, I would say that it's that you're wanting to connect with a new audience. You need to consider if refreshing your own brand. Your brand enables you to reach newly identified audiences, and just being sure that your brand does connect with your audience is important. So, and that doesn't necessarily mean a name change. It just could be an update of your messaging or your brand logo. Here's an example from one of our clients who came to see us when she was taking her offering to a new audience. She's a qualified coach and she wanted to extend her business to an online platform offering online programs and courses for people going through separation or divorce. The existing logo and branding across her business was a little bit inconsistent and it was lacking in polish. And we think sort of detracted a bit from the credibility and legitimacy of the course that she was, and expertise of the course that she was building. So now that she was reaching out to new audiences and through a new channel, because obviously she was going to drive traffic to her website through social media as well, everything really needed to look together, match up, and so we've done all the logos and formats and everything needed to function well on digital as well. So the new website went live and the client began rolling out new branding across social media, and the Fresh Start for me, I think, now presents, a really professional service. So hopefully they're well prepared for the growth that they're probably about to encounter. Here's the second reason, is differentiation, which is quite key. So differentiating your company from your competitors, especially if you've got new competitors entering your space, or perhaps you need to explain better why your services are unique or what you do better than your competitors. You might be aspiring to be thought leaders in your space. So it's key to find your point of difference and run with it. So I don't actually have any visual examples of this one at the moment, but I'll tell you about a project that I'm working on with a client in the education space. As you can imagine, choosing a school for your children is a fairly major decision. And this particular school I'm working with know inherently that they are different from many of the other schools in their area, but they're having trouble articulating it. So they kind of want to show what the difference is without showing off, because I think humility is really important when considering education. So our job in this case was to help them find the point of difference and then rebuild their messaging to capture the hearts and minds of the families that they want to join their community. So beyond, I think, what's currently assumed or expected in their market, and even within their student base. So we started the process last week with a brand workshop with their leadership team, and then ultimately it will end with a new prospectus and a website. With new messages or a fresh look and feel, but still keeping for them the traditional logo and the traditional colours, because tradition and uniform in this case are of course tied to their value proposition. Reason 3 why you might consider a rebrand or refresh is to adjust your key messaging or your services and your overall marketing strategy. So questions to ask yourself would be, has your company grown? Has your product or service changed or evolved? You need to look at your marketing messages. Are they still relevant and up to date? Do they really say what you can excel in as a company? Rebranding allows you the time to revisit all of your strategic goals and make those adjustments. So if your company's vision and market are no longer reflected in your brand, then it might be time to do something. This happens, I think this happens quite a lot in the B2B space. We have a customer here at Focus Marketing that we're working with at the moment. So I can't actually share a visual with you because they haven't launched their new brand yet. But they started their business a few years ago. They set up, as you do, with 3 founders, a logo made by a mate and a basic website built by a brother-in-law, and went to work. And then a few years later, now, they are nearly 20 people, and they've truly found a niche, and they can really see further growth on the horizon. So they've evolved now to a point that they're a major player in a new space that will now begin to attract more and more competition. So the time came for them to really, rebrand and embed their brand into the marketplace. So they've kept the same name, but their customer-facing image will completely change. So all new messaging. We've redefined their purpose, their employee value proposition, and then packaged it all really professionally polished with a new website, all supporting materials, capability statements, presentations, tender documents, reports, all of those things, giving them sort of the polish and professionalism to play in the space with now probably some of the world's leading companies. So I'm a firm believer in brand image mattering a lot more than people probably think. And I think in the B2B space, people shy away from it, saying that it probably doesn't really matter because they're B2B. But honestly, I think it does. It builds credibility. Here's another very simple example of it. So the current customer is quite complex. This is one that was a simple example. It just illustrates the same reason that you've changed, you've grown up. So Pure Plumbing made a business decision to focus purely on plumbing and not on solar anymore. So here you can see it's a brand is still recognisable to customers, but we've adjusted the logo. Now it does what it says on the tin, and then in line with that, we refreshed the website and focused on the core services that they now offer. So that's a simple update situation. Reason 4, merging of 2 companies, or a change of ownership. So we consider this one reactive branding. So it may be an acquisition, merger, and this has other unique challenges as well. And I think staff buy-in is one of those. This is a really common example, accountancy firm, and I'm sure people have seen this emerge over the years, and it's probably going to evolve more in years to come or into something different. So that's one. And then this one's probably a more complex one, and one that I've worked on myself. I used to work for Nalco and managed the integration communications when Ecolab bought them. So it was an acquisition that was managed like a merger. So, and it was the combined purpose that made that happen, as far as, the brand purpose that made the merger made the acquisition more like a merger. So their tagline is "Everywhere it matters," and the companies sort of were united on the purpose of what they do matters everywhere. Their goal is their mission, I should say, is make the world cleaner, safer and healthier, helping businesses succeed whilst protecting vital resources. So Ecolab was a food safety and hygiene company, and Nalco was a water company, and then they came together to have this greater purpose. Here you can see in the evolution of the logo that Nalco became, because it was so strong in the water space, stayed Nalco, became Nalco and Ecolab company, and then now the Nalco logo reflects the division in the water, but it looks like the Ecolab logo. So you can see now that they're totally integrated as one company. It was the Nalco merger, a Nalco Ecolab merger, that I also had direct experience in the communication required to merge 2 brands. I think bringing the value proposition of the companies together to communicate the combined entity from a brand perspective and the brand values is really, really important, especially to staff. Brand image is very much about who you are as a company. So for employees to have pride in the company, they need to understand the brand they work for from the outset. So being able to define and articulate the brand purpose in this instance actually had a huge impact on the buy-in of all the changes that we had to make. And some of the changes, when you all know from a merger perspective, are not always, fabulous. There could be synergies such as the inevitable efficiencies. So brand purpose is really important to success in this case. So moving on to reason 5, are you still relevant in the marketplace? Is your brand customer centric? How are you different? Does your brand actually articulate that? Can you focus on, how people experience your brand? Do you know? And are your long-term goals articulated in those brand decisions? So here, this is another company that I worked for. We actually did a complete rebrand, as you can see. We changed from Publicitas to Newbase. And there was a number of reasons for it. And I think reflecting on reason 5, it was most certainly about positioning in the marketplace. That was our catalyst. So Publicitas was a 125-year-old company with a strong name in media representation. We sold advertising basically in newspapers and magazines from all over the world, and our reputation was that we were the place to go for print advertising. As we all know, print advertising is dying, and digital advertising is the space to go. In reality, with the media partners that we worked with, we were the place for digital, and we worked, with our publishers along their journey, rolling out all the publications online. But the sales in digital didn't reflect it, and new customers didn't come to us for digital. So after years of, trying to become more and more digital and various, management buyouts and things like that, the decision was made to completely pivot and go to market, emphasising our independence and digital capability to actually finally get rid of the legacy in print. And to do that, we did the full rebrand. So we had to come up with the name and the logo, and then revisit all of our brand values, revisit our employee value proposition, and then roll this out over 28 countries. There was a lot of preparation, a lot of organisation, as well as a huge amount of communications, not only with our team, but then with our partners and our clients. And the only thing we really didn't change was the colours. And that actually facilitated, updating the materials quickly. And to be honest, the rebrand went extremely well. Our visibility certainly increased. The brand awareness in the digital space also increased. Our materials had a sort of fresh lease on life. The teams enjoyed the process. Sadly, the management buyout longer term was not such a success, but that's another story, not related to the brand situation. Reason 6. This is a pretty common one, and dated look and feel. Design naturally does date, and trends and fashions change. New channels emerge, everything's digital now. One brand I'm starting to work with at the moment have had the same logo for 40 years. It was designed by a founder, and they shape even colours. The shape and colours don't work on digital platforms. So it's really hard to use on social media. It's really hard to use in digital presentations. So it's time for them to revisit it. And this one's also really easily explained with a visual example. This is a client I worked with last year. That they're a career management company started by, one guy on his own who's, he's so clever, very, very good at his job. But it looked like initially that the logo was just created by him, and he's, just gone ahead and built materials over years and years and years. So 10 years down the track, he decided he had a few big jobs coming up, and it was time, to refresh the look and feel. And he's, having done all of that with a new logo, we've enlivened the colours, but kept some legacy to the original gold in the colour palette, brought the images up, away from that stocky feel and all sorts of things like that. It was literally a cosmetic overhaul. I remember him at the end of it just saying that the impact that it had on the business was like, client feedback was amazing. But he said the thing that he felt most about it was the pride that he and the team that he'd built over all these years now felt in going out to customers and talking to them with, with this fresh new brand and look. So I think employee pride in your brand does so much, so many positive things for your brand image in the marketplace, like overall, and the perception of your brand, because the people who are engaged in it just feel so passionate about it. So this is just a nice, clear example of the look and feel. Here's one I won't dwell on too much, negative reputation. So rebranding in these circumstances is obviously not foolproof solution. They don't always succeed, but I do have an example, not one of ours, thankfully. I haven't actually had that much personal experience with this, but I'm sure you're probably aware of this one with the Lance Armstrong Foundation, where Lance was obviously found to have been fraudulent in his yellow jersey winning career in the Tour de France, and to step away from that, they moved to the brand Livestrong, which initially was the Lance Armstrong Foundation and then moved to Livestrong. And just recently, I think it was 2020, they rebranded again, which is a further step away from the yellow from the Tour de France, having been stripped of those jerseys. Reason 8, expected growth. I think this one is actually really important, and I think living in Brisbane, this one has been the catalyst for certainly another one of our clients this year. So are you potentially expanding internationally? I referenced a client earlier in reason 3 with the evolution, but that is also now looking at expanding internationally. So they have to future-proof the brand. Consolidate branding, and also just unity, just get everything all looking fresh and clean on the same page. I just made a note here, having worked internationally quite a bit, that researching what a company names means overseas and how it translates is also really important if you are considering expanding internationally. I think here, in addition to that reason 3 that I mentioned, they've evolved and they're on the brink of significant growth. So they wanted to do, the rebrand before all of that happened. But we're also working with another client who've also not launched the rebrand, so I won't show you their visuals today. But they've been consulting in the sustainability and infrastructure space. So with the Olympics coming to Brisbane, they can see themselves on a sort of growth trajectory as well, or an exposure trajectory as well. So they wanted to make sure that everything was looking fresh and professional before that happened. So we've rebuilt the website, again, come up with a new brand, new logo, set in stone their brand style guides, updated capability statements, all of their templates for internal use. We're almost ready to go with that one. So you will see that launched on our socials in the coming weeks. So it's quite exciting. There's another one that I think in the B2B space happens just because brands evolve. So we call it weak brand image. I feel like a strong brand image translates into a positive brand image. And that's, those things that I go on about regularly if you've ever heard me speak before, but consistency. But what does your current brand say about your company? Does it showcase that you have an identity? Are you easily recognizable? Are things uniform across all your platforms and your website and your collateral? So things do get out of date, or you just grow out of things as an organization. So if you need to set yourself apart from competitors, it might be something to consider. You might not like to think of it as a weak brand image, but you might think the inconsistency contributes to that over time. And you can't actually control how each customer will perceive your brand, but you can work hard to sort of build an image that ensures you come across the way you intend to. Have a look here. This is a company that we started working with at the beginning of this year. And whilst we didn't change their logo, the company really does feel like it has had a progressive rebrand over the course of this year. It was a grassroots B2B company that has grown basically from 5 men in a shed 17 years ago to a team of 100 now, with a massive workshop, talented engineering team. And the time had sort of come. They didn't really know, CS Gas didn't know where to start, but they knew that the market perception of their brand was not up to date with the capabilities that they now have. So we started the rebrand process as a brand workshop and a series of interviews across their key stakeholders, their clients, suppliers and staff mostly. And from there, that's how we rebuilt their messaging. Then we put in place a brand style guide, which set in stone the colours and the fonts and best practice for its use, which despite having their logo for a long time, the look and feel had sort of over the years got a bit more random and across various docs and the old website and things like that. Then we built a new website, a capability statement, new sales presentations. We shot a video for them that showcases their experience and scale. And then, of course, they've hit social media, like with this consistent brand all year, building out those capabilities. And they now really have a very recognisable brand and a presence in the marketplace that's continuing to strengthen and grow. And even the team, of course, now knows how to use it as well. So that's been helpful. So those are sort of, I think, the key reasons that I would consider doing a rebrand. And I think before you start, you really do need to make sure that you have solid buy-in from your management. Obviously, it depends on the size of your company and those sorts of things. But if it's relevant to the size of your business, I would form a project team, because having too many voices when it comes to, you know, choosing colours and logos and deciding things can actually just make the whole process take forever. I think identifying the changes that are required is really important, because the list can be extensive. You know, it can include all of your collateral, your website, your logos, all of your documents, internal and external, things like vehicle signage, building signage, you know, and all of those things actually impact your budget allocation as well. The website, your social media channels, everything. So budget allocation is also really important, and you may need to make a decision about what needs to be done initially, or keeping some things like colours the same so that the exchange can be a bit more gradual, and just manage the key touch points first. So all of those things come into play. You can prioritise, I think, once you've worked out what your challenges and changes are. And then sometimes it's time sensitive, so you need to establish your time. It could be that there's a launch for something, or there's a big event coming, or a merger happening. So, you know, you need to decide how it's going to be rolled out and then establish a timeline to sign it off. These projects, some can take, pulled off the Publicitas new base in 6 weeks, because that's what we had for a big event, where we were able to launch our new brand. Others can take months because so many people get involved and too many opinions, you know, come. But working with a marketing agency that can also help you manage that, by sticking to sort of our sort of tried and tested practices, I guess, of, you know, how we design things and present them back to the business. I think the other thing that I've really learned over the years is that it's so important not to forget your employees, especially if you're not including all of them in the project team. I think it's still really important for them to have a buy-in from the beginning, that they know what you're going to be doing, and certainly communicate anything new with them first, before you go to market. And obviously, after your rebrand or refresh, you know, don't go quiet, and certainly don't ever reference any of your old materials. So you need to immediately stop using all your old templates, ensure you have all your new messaging across all of your platforms and touch points, and make it really easy for the staff to access all the new brand assets and have them ready to go with presentations and credentials and all the new things that they need to ensure sales in particular. So to summarise, I think company brands should actually always continuously and strategically review your position in the marketplace. Close to my heart is consistency. It's important, as well as not being left behind. And I think sometimes brands these days, everybody is so visual. People don't necessarily read as much as they used to read. So what people see in the headlines and things that stand out first are becoming more and more important. Staying relevant is crucial in our ever-changing digital world. Everything can just spin like overnight. So I think if we want to strive to stand out, we really have to make sure that we stay relevant as an organisation. So on that note, if there's no specific questions, Tracy? No, Tracy said there's no specific, but obviously you can reach out to me anytime. You can find me here at Focus Marketing, and I look forward to talking to you at some stage in the future. So thank you for listening. There's my contact details.